The galaxy had long been at peace, its various civilizations living their lives without much concern for the others. The Galactic Council, a group of representatives from the most powerful species, had worked hard to keep things balanced. However, that peace was shattered the moment the Drexy Dominion appeared. Known across the stars for their ruthless conquests, the Drexy had already crushed dozens of peaceful worlds under their boot, and now they were heading toward a new target: humanity. The Drexy were not like other species. They were biologically enhanced, their soldiers designed to be the perfect warriors, fast, strong, and nearly impossible to kill. Their ships were built from living metal, which could repair itself as it was damaged, and their weapons could tear through the toughest armor in seconds. For centuries, they had expanded their empire, and no one had dared challenge them. But now, the Drexy were coming for Earth. The Galactic Council had known about Earth for some time, but they had kept humanity hidden. They believed that the human race was too unpredictable, too volatile. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, the most dangerous classification known in the galaxy. Other species who encountered humans often reported a strange mix of intelligence and ferocity. Humans were capable of both extraordinary creativity and unthinkable violence. The Council feared the consequences of revealing humanity to the galaxy. But now, there was no choice. In a hastily organized meeting, the Council reached out to Earth, hoping for assistance. They explained the situation to the human leaders. The Drexy were coming, and their forces were too strong for any of the Council's member species to handle. The humans, however, did not seem afraid. They weren't even surprised. In fact, they had been waiting for this day. From Earth, the response came quickly and clearly: "We'll handle it." There was no panic, no sense of desperation, just an unshakable confidence that whatever the Drexy brought, humanity would face it head-on. The Galactic Council did not understand why the humans were so calm, but they had no other choice but to trust them. They sent a fleet of human warships, each one a strange mix of old and new technology. Their designs were far from sleek or elegant. Unlike the ships of the galactic powers, the human vessels were crude, almost barbaric in appearance. But there was something about them that spoke of a deep, unrelenting power. The Drexy, on the other hand, were confident in their superiority. They had never met a species that could challenge them, and they had no reason to believe that humans would be any different. They watched as the human ships entered their space, expecting an easy victory. But there was one thing the Drexy didn't know. Humans were not like the other species of the galaxy, and when they finally came face to face with the Drexy, the galaxy would soon learn why humanity was considered the ultimate Deathworlder. The Drexy warlords watched as the human fleet entered their star system. They couldn't help but sneer. These primitive humans had no idea what they were up against. They had seen dozens of civilizations crumble before the might of the Drexy Dominion. The Drexy were unstoppable, perfect warriors. The humans were nothing more than a curiosity, a species that had managed to survive on a dangerous world. It was almost cute. The Drexy assumed this would be no different. The humans, however, had a different perspective. As their ships came closer to Drexy space, the human commanders stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the screens before them. They had fought in wars before, wars that no one outside Earth could possibly understand. Earth was a place where life was constantly trying to kill you. Wild animals, brutal weather, and fierce competition for resources had shaped humanity into something unlike any other species in the galaxy. They didn't fear death. They embraced it. And now, they were going to show the Drexy just what they had been missing. The human ships weren't the sleek, advanced war machines that most species would expect. Instead, they were bulky, with jagged edges and patched-together armor. The ships were clearly older models, but the humans had refitted them with deadly new technology that made them a force to be reckoned with. The Drexy would soon realize that, while human ships might look outdated, their true power lay in what was inside. As the first battleships entered Drexy space, the Drexy made their move. Massive waves of bio-warriors were sent to engage the humans, their weapons designed to cut through anything that stood in their way. The Drexi had the advantage of numbers, and their soldiers were physically superior to anything humanity had ever faced. Their ships could regenerate and repair themselves. Surely, the humans would be crushed under the weight of the Drexi's power. But humanity had something the Drexi didn't account for: cunning. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their brute force, but in their ability to adapt. The first battle was chaotic, but the humans didn't panic. They used every advantage they had: the terrain, their surroundings, and their ability to think quickly. While the Drexi attacked in a straightforward, predictable manner, the humans fought with unpredictable, clever strategies. They laid traps, used guerrilla tactics, and attacked from unexpected angles. The Drexi, used to fighting in a direct, overwhelming manner, couldn't keep up with the humans' relentless, ever-changing tactics. The Drexi had believed that their enemies would run and hide, just as most had. Instead, they were met with a brutal surprise. Humans don't back down. Every time a Drexi warrior thought they had cornered a human, they found themselves in a fight for their lives. The humans did not care about honor or glory. They fought to survive, and they fought dirty if they had to. The Drexi generals, who had once laughed at the idea of humanity as a threat, were now beginning to feel the weight of their mistake. The humans were proving to be something far more dangerous than anyone had expected. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: the Drexi were about to learn the hard way what it meant to fight a true Deathworlder. And Earth's warriors had only just begun. The first few hours of battle had been a shock to the Drexi. Their bio-warriors, genetically engineered to be the perfect soldiers, had fought with everything they had. But the humans, they were unlike anything the Drexi had ever fought before. The Drexi had expected weakness, fear, panic, disarray. But instead, they found something far more terrifying: determination. The Drexi had crushed countless civilizations in their time. Entire planets had fallen without a single shot fired in return. They had faced down alien species with much greater technology, advanced knowledge, and greater numbers. But this was different. The humans weren't afraid. And they fought with a kind of fury that was as wild as it was relentless. When one of the Drexi warriors shot down a human fighter, the human pilot didn't retreat. Instead, they flew straight at the enemy ship, using the wreckage of their own craft as a weapon, colliding with the Drexi vessel and forcing it to explode in a fireball. There was no strategy, no grand plan, just raw, unfiltered anger and willpower. In the next battle, it wasn't just the soldiers on the front lines that the Drexi had to worry about. It was the civilians. The humans were everywhere: farmers, engineers, scientists. People who weren't even soldiers rushed to the fight. The human resistance wasn't just a military force, it was a nation of warriors. And each individual was willing to give everything to defend their world. The Drexi commanders were stunned. They had expected to see human armies of professional soldiers. Instead, they faced a horde, a group of civilians armed with makeshift weapons, homemade bombs, modified rifles, and even just sharp tools, attacked without fear or hesitation. It was madness, it was chaos, but in this chaos, the humans thrived. They adapted to every situation. They found a way to fight, no matter the odds. One Drexi officer, watching from his command ship, asked his superior, "How are they doing this?" "They are just humans." The senior officer could only shake his head, watching the humans charge into battle again, despite having lost so many soldiers. "Because they have something we don't," he muttered. "They fight not just for victory. They fight for survival. And that makes them more dangerous than anything we've ever faced." The humans fought not with the precision of machines, but with the unpredictability of wild animals. When a squad of Drexi soldiers cornered a group of human survivors, they expected an easy kill. But the humans fought back with a fury that made the Drexi hesitate. A small, untrained woman, holding only a rusty wrench, managed to take down 3 Drexy soldiers, not by strength, but by sheer desperation. She fought like someone who had nothing left to lose. As the battle raged on, the Drexy found themselves pushed back again and again. They couldn't keep up with the humans' ability to recover. When their bio-soldiers were destroyed, the humans didn't need advanced technology to replace them. They used their own bodies. Broken, battered, and bruised, the humans kept coming. No matter how many times they were struck down, they got back up. They were unstoppable. The Drexy began to realize something horrifying. It wasn't just the humans' technology that made them dangerous. It was their spirit. They didn't break. They didn't fear death. They embraced it. And in doing so, they had become a force far more terrifying than any bioengineered soldier or advanced warship. The Drexy weren't just fighting an enemy. They were fighting a monster, a creature born from the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. And this monster was far from finished. The battle raged across the Drexy-controlled system, with the human forces gaining momentum at every turn. The Drexy were no longer sure of their victory. What was supposed to be an easy conquest had turned into a nightmare. It wasn't just the humans' tactics that were troubling. It was their survival instinct. Something about them made the Drexy feel uneasy. The Drexy, known for their strength and perfection, had never faced a species that refused to die. When a Drexy general saw a human soldier stumble and fall under a blast, he assumed it was the end. But moments later, the soldier rose again, bloody but not broken. The soldier staggered to his feet, refusing to die, and returned to the fight with an intensity that even the Drexy had to respect. In every skirmish, human soldiers, once wounded or exhausted, would rise again, their eyes burning with a relentless fire. The Drexy watched in disbelief as a human scout squad, trapped behind enemy lines, refused to surrender. Despite being outnumbered and surrounded by Drexy soldiers, the humans fought on. Even when their supplies ran out, even when their weapons broke, the humans improvised. They crafted new tools from the wreckage of Drexy ships and turned the battlefield into a deadly trap for their enemies. The Drexy had assumed that their perfect bio-soldiers would intimidate the humans into submission. What they didn't realize was that the human mind was the ultimate weapon. It adapted. It invented. It survived. The more the Drexy encountered humanity, the more they were forced to acknowledge the terrifying truth. Humans didn't just fight. They evolved. Where most species would crumble under stress, humans only became more dangerous. The Drexy's genetic enhancements, designed to make them better than every other species, didn't prepare them for this. Even when Drexy warriors were injured, they were quick to heal. But when a human soldier was injured, the body would begin to shut down. And yet that wasn't the end. They would push their bodies beyond their limits, whether through sheer willpower or through the desperation to stay alive and keep fighting. They would adapt to the pain, to the exhaustion, to the despair. A Drexy commander, once proud of his perfect army, began to question everything he had known. He had assumed that biological perfection was the ultimate achievement. Yet every time he saw a human rise from the ashes of their own destruction, he realized that they had something his warriors never would: the will to live. And the humans used that will to push themselves beyond the limits of their biology. One day, as the Drexy watched a group of human soldiers engage in a brutal firefight, something strange happened. One of the human soldiers, barely able to stand, used a makeshift grenade, crafted from scraps of Drexy technology, to blow up a key enemy position. It wasn't a perfect weapon. It wasn't a high-tech piece of machinery, but it worked. The soldier then collapsed from exhaustion, only to be dragged away by his comrades to fight again. The Drexy realized with growing fear that humans didn't just survive. They broke the very laws of evolution. Their ability to survive was so strong, it made their enemies' strengths seem trivial. The Drexy thought they were the pinnacle of military evolution, but in the face of humanity, they were merely playing catch-up. The galaxy had never seen anything like this before. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were fighting for something far more dangerous, the right to exist, and that made them unstoppable. The Drexi had always relied on fear. Their empire had expanded by crushing worlds and spreading terror, using their superior strength and advanced bioweapons. They believed that fear alone would make others submit, but humanity wasn't like the other species they had conquered. The more the Drexi tried to intimidate, the more they began to realize something terrifying. Humans weren't afraid. Instead of breaking, the humans had found a way to use their own fear as a weapon. They didn't just fight back physically. They launched a psychological war that shook the very foundation of the Drexi Empire. In one battle, the Drexi had captured a group of human prisoners. They assumed the humans would beg for mercy. They were wrong. Instead, the prisoners remained calm, their eyes cold and determined. The Drexi leader decided to make an example of them, broadcasting the executions across the battlefield to break the human spirit. But when the moment came, the humans did something unexpected. They smiled. They smiled as they were led to their death, and they spoke words of defiance to the Drexi. "We'll be back," one of them said, his voice carrying through the Drexi command ship speakers. "And we'll bring hell with us." The Drexi commanders didn't know how to respond. They had expected humans to beg, to cry, to plead. Instead, they saw a resilience that made them question everything. The prisoners, now dead, became martyrs. Their words spread like wildfire through human ranks. The Drexi had thought that killing humans would break them, but instead, it had turned them into symbols of resistance. Each death only empowered the humans more. In the next battle, the humans began using fear in ways the Drexi had never anticipated. They played recorded war cries from other battles, terrifying howls that echoed across the Drexi communication systems. It was a sound designed to unsettle, to remind the Drexi that humans were capable of cruelty. They sent out transmissions taunting the Drexi, using their own words against them, laughing at their bioengineered perfection. But the psychological warfare didn't stop there. The humans started leaving trophies, not just bodies, but messages. In the aftermath of each skirmish, human forces would destroy Drexi biosoldiers and arrange them into grotesque displays, heads on spikes, bodies twisted into shapes that symbolized death and destruction. The Drexi had thought they controlled the fear, but the humans had flipped the script. The trophies weren't just meant to shock. They were meant to haunt. And it worked. One Drexi general, standing in the ruins of a battlefield, found himself facing a chilling reality. He wasn't the predator. He was the prey. His soldiers, once unshakable, were now scared. They hesitated when they heard human war cries in the distance. They feared what came next. The Drexi, who had conquered and controlled others for centuries, now found themselves rattled by a force they couldn't understand. The Drexi had underestimated humanity. They believed that victory could be achieved through force alone. But the humans had shown them that victory was just as much about the mind as it was about weapons. Humanity wasn't simply fighting to win. They were fighting to destroy the Drexi spirit, to break them emotionally and mentally. And it was working. As the war continued, the Drexi began to see something they had never seen before in their victims. Not just resistance, but a burning desire for revenge. Humanity's fight wasn't just for survival. It was personal. And that made them far more dangerous than anything the Drexi had ever faced. The Drexi had underestimated the strength of the human spirit. As the war dragged on, their once confident forces began to falter. Each victory humanity claimed seemed to fuel their determination, while the Drexi grew more disoriented and unsure. The psychological tactics humans used had sown doubt and fear into the hearts of the Drexi warriors. The very thing that had made the Drexi so dangerous, their belief in their invincibility, was now their greatest weakness. The humans, on the other hand, continued to push forward with a relentless, almost instinctual drive. Each battle, no matter how difficult, only made them stronger. They adapted to every challenge, learning and evolving in ways that even the Drexi generals struggled to understand. And as the human forces began to win more battles, the Drexi started to realize something terrifying. They were losing. The first major turning point came when the human fleet, which had been considered weak and outdated compared to the Drexi's state-of-the-art warships, managed to disable one of the Drexi's flagship cruisers. The Drexi flagship had been an unstoppable force, its weapons more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced. But the humans had studied it, watched it carefully, and found its one flaw. With a mix of clever tactics, sheer determination, and sheer will to survive, the humans took down the flagship. The Drexi were in shock. Their most powerful ship, the one they thought was invincible, had been brought down by humans. It wasn't the power of their weapons that had done it. It was the humans' ability to think, to adapt, and to never give up. The humans didn't fight like machines. They fought with heart, with passion, with creativity. And that was something the Drexi had never prepared for. With the flagship destroyed, the Drexi fleet's morale began to crack. They had never lost a ship like this before, especially not to a species they considered weak. But the humans weren't just any species. They were survivors. And now, the Drexi had to contend with a hunger they couldn't comprehend. The hunger of a species who fought not just for territory or power, but for their very right to exist. As the days went by, the Drexi began to make mistakes. They split their forces, assuming the humans would follow predictable patterns. But the humans were anything but predictable. They attacked in waves, constantly shifting their strategies. They attacked at night, in storms, in the heart of Drexi territory. They never stopped. And the human propaganda machine was hard at work too. News of human victories spread across the galaxy, even reaching some of the most neutral species that had previously been afraid to get involved. Seeing humans stand their ground against the Drexi sparked something in these civilizations. It was like a fire had been lit. If the humans could stand up to the Drexi, maybe they could too. The Drexi felt the pressure mounting. They were no longer the unstoppable force they once believed themselves to be. The tide was turning, and they knew it. As much as they tried to regain control, the humans continued to gain strength and support, building alliances with other species. The once feared Drexi were now surrounded on all sides, their confidence shattered. What the Drexi didn't realize, however, was that this was just the beginning. The humans weren't simply fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for revenge. The Drexi had invaded their world, destroyed their homes, and killed their people. And the humans weren't going to stop until they had taken everything the Drexi had built and turned it to rubble. The ultimate Deathworlders had awoken. And now, the Drexi were going to experience firsthand why humans were considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The end for the Drexi had begun. The war had reached its breaking point. The Drexi forces, once proud and nearly unstoppable, were now fighting for their very survival. They had underestimated humanity from the beginning, thinking them to be primitive and weak. But as the weeks turned into months, the humans showed no signs of stopping. Every attempt to crush them only seemed to make them stronger. Every battle they lost, they came back with renewed vigor. The humans had become like a storm, sweeping across Drexi territories, unrelenting and unpredictable. The Drexi could no longer rely on their usual tactics. Their bio-soldiers, once the perfect warriors, had begun to break under the pressure. The human soldiers, who had once been considered outmatched and outclassed, now struck with a precision that even the Drexi couldn't counter. The humans had figured out their weaknesses, and now they were exploiting every single one. The Drexi had made the mistake of thinking that they could scare humanity into submission. But what they failed to understand was that fear was a weapon that humans could wield as well. Instead of bowing to it, they used it to fuel their rage, to drive them further. And now, the humans were pushing forward with a purpose that was nearly unstoppable. On the battlefield, the once mighty Drexi forces had begun to fracture. Their command structure was in disarray, their warriors disheartened by the constant, overwhelming onslaught from the humans. They had never encountered a species like this before, one that did not fear death, but embraced it, one that could adapt, evolve, and learn from every battle. The Drexy's first mistake had been underestimating the humans. Their second mistake was failing to see how personal the war had become for them. This wasn't just about survival. This was about revenge. Humanity wasn't fighting just to defend their homes. They were fighting for every person the Drexy had killed, for every city destroyed, for every life lost. The final push began when the humans launched a massive, coordinated strike deep into Drexy space. Their fleet, now fully equipped and battle-hardened, moved as one. They attacked from every direction, targeting key Drexy installations and supply lines. The Drexy, scattered and struggling to regroup, tried to fight back, but it was too late. The humans were everywhere. In one decisive moment, the humans attacked the Drexy's last stronghold, a massive, heavily fortified city on the capital planet. The Drexy had expected this fortress to be their final defense, the place where they would hold out and regroup. But humanity had other plans. The human soldiers, using everything they had learned in the past months, infiltrated the fortress from within. They didn't just storm the gates, they became part of the city itself. The Drexy found themselves fighting not just an army, but an entire people. Every building, every street, every shadow was a potential threat. The humans had turned the city into a trap, and the Drexy walked right into it. As the battle intensified, the Drexy realized they were surrounded. Their defenses were crumbling. And then, in the heart of the city, humanity launched its final assault. Using a weapon that had been developed from Drexy technology stolen earlier in the war, the humans unleashed a devastating attack. The weapon was designed to target Drexy ships and bases, but the humans had modified it to destroy the very heart of the Drexy Empire. It was over. The Drexy forces, unable to respond in time, were obliterated. The once mighty empire fell to its knees, its leaders captured, its warriors scattered. For the first time in their history, the Drexy realized what it truly meant to be defeated, and it was all because they had never understood the true power of humanity. The humans had proven one simple truth: never underestimate a species that fights not just to win, but to survive. The war was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. The fall of the Drexy Empire was swift and brutal. The last of their defenses shattered, their leaders captured or fleeing, and their once proud forces scattered to the far corners of the galaxy. Humanity, against all odds, had won, but victory came at a high cost. The aftermath of the war left the human survivors with more than just the physical scars of battle. The devastation was everywhere. Cities lay in ruins, planets were left lifeless after Drexy bombardments, and countless families had lost loved ones in the struggle. The cost of their victory was not just measured in battles won, but in the lives lost along the way. Yet, as the dust began to settle, humanity began to rebuild. It wasn't just about repairing buildings or replanting crops. It was about recovering the spirit of the people. The war had tested them in ways they had never imagined. And now, in the silence of victory, they had to confront the emotional and psychological toll it had taken. In the cities still standing, people walked among the ruins, picking up the pieces of their lives. Soldiers who had once fought with nothing left to lose now stood in quiet contemplation, haunted by the faces of their fallen comrades. The victory over the Drexy was complete, but for many, it felt bittersweet. Humanity had won, but at what cost? Many soldiers returned to their families, only to realize they had changed. The war had molded them into something different. The faces of the dead, the battles fought, and the endless days of struggle now lingered in their minds. But they were alive, and that was something the Drexy had never expected. It wasn't just the military that had changed. Entire communities had been forged in the fires of war. Civilians who had once lived peaceful, quiet lives had become fighters, inventors, strategists. They had fought side by side with the soldiers, learning to adapt and survive. These civilians, many of whom had lost everything, were now rebuilding their homes with a sense of unity and purpose. In the capital city, a memorial was erected to honor the fallen. The names of the dead were carved into towering stone columns, each one a testament to the sacrifice that had brought victory. The memorial was not just a tribute to the soldiers who had fought, but to the human spirit itself, a spirit that had refused to be broken, no matter how overwhelming the odds. Yet, even in the face of victory, a question lingered in the minds of the people. What now? With the Drexy Empire in ruins, many saw an opportunity to rebuild their worlds, to forge new alliances, and to restore what had been lost. But there were others who feared the future. Would the universe be kind to humanity after everything they had endured? Would they face new enemies, new challenges, or worse yet, fall into complacency? As the months passed, humanity's focus shifted from survival to rebuilding. But the war had taught them something vital. They had proven they were not just survivors. They were fighters. They could face the impossible, and they would never stop fighting for their future. The Drexy had thought they were the ultimate species, but humanity had shown them something that made them more dangerous than anything the Drexy had ever faced. The human spirit, unbroken, relentless, and fiercely protective, had turned the tide of the war. Humanity was no longer just a species. They were a force to be reckoned with. And while their victory was hard-earned, it was earned nonetheless. The galaxy had learned one undeniable truth: never underestimate the power of a species that will fight to the bitter end. The war against the Drexy was over. The galaxy, once trembling in fear of the Drexy Empire's might, was now witnessing a new reality. Humanity, the species once thought to be weak and primitive, had shattered the chains of oppression and proven themselves as something more than just survivors. They were warriors, innovators, and leaders. But with victory came new challenges, and humanity had learned that their fight was far from over. As the months passed, the humans began the long and difficult task of rebuilding their worlds. The Drexy's destruction had left scars across planets, and much of what had been lost could never be replaced. Cities had to be rebuilt from the ground up, and millions of lives needed to be healed, physically and emotionally. Yet, as difficult as it was, humanity pressed forward with a determination that seemed impossible to stop. Leaders of many nations gathered to discuss the future. The once divided human factions had learned the hard way that they were stronger together. There was a new sense of unity and a common purpose: to ensure that the horrors of the war would never be repeated. The human race had tasted the power of unity, and they weren't about to let that go. They knew the price of peace, and they would fight to keep it. But the Drexy weren't the only threat humanity had to consider. The war had shown them just how fragile peace could be. It was no longer enough to simply fight for survival. The humans had to learn to protect what they had earned, to defend their people and their future. And so, humanity turned its gaze outward, toward the stars, where new dangers and opportunities awaited. The Drexy Empire may have fallen, but other alien civilizations watched humanity with both fear and curiosity. The once weak species had just toppled an empire that had ruled for centuries. What would they do next? Would they become the new power in the galaxy, or would they be swallowed up by the very forces that had once dominated them? In response, humanity took a bold step. The leaders of Earth and the colonies called for a grand council, inviting representatives from other species, some old allies, some neutral, and some who had once feared the Drexy. It was an unprecedented move. The humans were no longer content with simply surviving in a galaxy of predators. They wanted to be a force of peace, a force that could unite the stars and ensure that no species, whether human or alien, would ever again have to live under the shadow of tyranny. The council was held on Earth, in the rebuilt capital. It was here, in the heart of humanity's rebirth, that they proposed a new alliance, a federation of species, working together for the common good. They offered the hand of peace to anyone willing to join, but they made it clear that any who threatened that peace would face the full might of humanity. The invitation was met with mixed reactions. Some species were cautious, unsure if humanity's rise was a fluke or the beginning of something much greater. Others, however, saw it as an opportunity to stand with a species that had proven its strength, its heart, and its resilience. In the end, the galaxy was changed forever. Humanity had proven, beyond a doubt, that they were not just survivors. They were the ultimate Deathworlders, capable of facing down any threat, no matter how great. The Drexi may have fallen, but their legacy of fear would be replaced with a new era, an era of unity, hope, and strength. And so, with the stars wide open before them, humanity set its sights on a new future, one where they would lead and protect. No longer just the underdogs, humanity had become the guardians of the galaxy. The Drexi would never return to threaten them again, and humanity had earned their place in the universe, not as a species to be feared, but as a species to be respected.